3, 2, 1.
Welcome to another episode of the Politipop Podcast, the podcast where we take your favorite pop culture media and discuss the social and political themes within. I'm your co-host, Mike Booch, a.k.a. Looking Ass, and I am thrilled to be joined by my sexy co-host as always. Please give it up for Ty.
Hey, this is Ty, a.k.a. Roarsnack.
Oh, god damn, two episodes in a row, you have beaten my ass with these AKAs.
Watchmen's brought out the best in me.
I love it. Yes, that's right. So we are reading between the lines of delving into HBO's Watchmen series. Of course, showrunner David Lindelof, but also a variety of other very talented writers. I hate using the term talented. You want to know why?
Why? All writers are talented?
Natural.
Oh.
No. Yeah, in my opinion, talent's natural. It's not something that you can have like a natural talent and then work on it, but also when you've worked on it, like you can just be a good writer or a smart writer or whatever.
That's a great point. That's a great point. So I won't be reading a summary of the episodes. We're only doing episodes 4, 5, and 6. We did the first 3 last week. But yeah, we're going to be delving into those episodes, and I'm very excited because episodes 5 and 6 are 2 of my 3 favorite of the whole season, and some really great stuff there to talk about.
Yeah, the place where I shot myself in the foot was that I should have watched just 4, 5, and 6, but it was so good that I binged watched all the way through the end of the season, and then I had to look back and be like, what happened in episodes 4, 5, and 6? Because like the last 3 episodes are so intense. The whole series is good, but like every episode you're just like, oh, what the fuck was the last one? I love this.
It definitely builds. Like it's world building in the beginning, and then some great revelations in the middle, and then just some crazy shit at the end. But I didn't rewatch the last 3 because I wanted to remember what happened in the episodes we're reviewing more.
Before we go into these episode reviews, I just have some housekeeping I want to take care of. First off, we're just hearing, this is like less than 2 days old. We are learning about Jacob Blake. He was a man that was shot in Wisconsin 7 times in the back by police officers. There is a Facebook video, like a video someone recorded on their phone and put on Facebook. From what I know of the situation, which, I only looked at it a few hours ago. Who knows what we know now? But it was in Wisconsin. There was a man named Jacob Blake. He's a black man. He was called to break up a domestic dispute between 2 women, break up a fight between them. Cops ended up getting called, and of course, there's videos of 2 of them pointing guns at his back. He's walking away from them. He walks to the driver's seat of his vehicle to get in, or maybe to grab something. Who knows? This vehicle, by the way, does have children in it, and the cops shot him at least 7 times in the back. He's being treated for those wounds. As of last I checked, he was alive, but who knows if he'll survive. Have you heard about this yet, Ty?
You sent me a video before we recorded. I did watch it. So it's obviously a pretty disturbing video to watch. He's climbing to the vehicle and they just start unloading on him. I think they said 7 shots were fired, or several shots were fired.
It was at least 7 shots. Like
okay,
if you listen to the video, you can hear 7, but who knows? Yeah,
I mean, with his kids in the car, he's not dead, right? I think he's in the hospital. I don't know if he's going to make it or not. I don't think they've really said what his condition is. But think about how traumatizing that is for his kids, no matter what. Like, to remember your father being shot by police. And that's going to stick with you. And you want to know why people don't trust the police. I mean, would you? Would you grow up and trust them after that? I wouldn't, That would definitely always be in the back of my mind. And they said they're not sure if they saw a weapon or whatnot. His back was to them. Again, there's so many other options. They could have done. I don't think force was necessary, but don't they have tasers too? Like, why do they go for the gun first? I don't know. I'll never understand that.
They always manage to find ways to apprehend white suspects or white perps, they always find a way to apprehend them in a safer manner than they do black people. So it's like, even if he is going into the car to get a handgun or whatever it may be, like let's say the worst of the worst is happening. They suspect that he's on drugs, so for some reason he may not be affected by the taser. They believe black people are supervillains, or super predators, as to quote Hillary Rodham Clinton. And like, let's say he was all of those things and he was attempting to do that. They followed him right behind his back, meaning, guess what? You're not in fear for your life. And also, they unloaded 7 rounds into a car with children in it. Bullets ricochet. They don't just stop, okay? And if you're shooting someone point blank in the back 7 times, means you're not a good shot. Okay, so who knows, whatever shots might have missed made it in, into the rest of the car and put these kids in danger. Like, man, so I know I spoke about it off mic. I've been listening to Behind the Police. It's a mini series. It's a podcast series. Please check it out. It is only 6 episodes long. They're about an hour each episode. It's called Behind the Police, and it talks about how policing has come about, not throughout just this country, but how it came about from the world and made its way to America. Went from the whole slave patrols to the Klan, and to people pushing gangster rackets on the average citizens, and also eventually becoming police. And the reason why I'm bringing up Behind the Police, obviously because of everything the past few months and since the entire beginning of our country, but also because Robert Evans, he also hosts a podcast called Behind the Bastards. They do have an episode on Trump, at least one, and they cover like some of history's most infamous people. But most recently, Robert Evans was also at the Portland protests, where they faced off with white supremacists or anti-protesters, whatever you want to fucking call them, and he got his hand broken.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. So Robert Evans, friend of the Daily Zeitgeist, another podcast which we frequent from time to time. So yeah, check out Behind the Police if you haven't already. We'll include a link in the show notes, as we do for literally everything. And definitely follow Robert Evans. His Twitter is full of his own behind the scenes videos of what was going on at that protest recently in Portland.
That's awesome.
And also don't when I looked up the thing about Jacob Blake, there were so many already that said, oh, riots and all this other stuff happening and vandalism and protests and blah, blah, blah. Once again, don't tell me just about the symptoms. Tell me about the cause. Tell me about what causes the sickness in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not an excuse to shoot someone in the back, right? So.
Yeah, and guess what? If we're back to that same fire that we had before, just after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, let's go for it, because once again, just talking doesn't get anything done, unfortunately. People care more about public property, so take that shit down.
Yeah, as we see, painting Black Lives Matter doesn't actually help end systematic racism. Policy change does. So.
Well said, well done. Do you know what else was well done?
Watchmen? Episodes 4, 5, and 6?
Oh. The next part of my housekeeping. I'm sorry, I had to cover. I can't talk about Watchmen. I cannot talk about a DC property without talking about what I just saw this past weekend. Did you see the Batman trailer?
All I have to say is I am vengeance.
Dude, I am so ready for this. I haven't been excited about a Batman movie in a long time. You know that.
Like, I'm not going to say it's going to be better than Dark Knight, but this might be the best Batman portrayal. I don't know. I'm really excited about Robert Pattinson in it. He looks awesome. I'm excited about the Riddler. It seems like they're going to go after the detective angle a little bit more, which always seems to be left out of the films, unfortunately. So I'm hoping he has to solve some actual riddles and show why it was called Detective Comics and not Batman originally. That's
a good point. This rings very Earth 1 to me. You remember Earth 1, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this kind of has the same idea to me. So I'm definitely looking forward to that, because that was a cool, original, and might I say realistic take on Batman, which
it definitely was,
want but don't want.
Definitely. They said this takes place in year 2 of Batman. And there's going to be a HBO Max series about Gotham PD, which takes place in year 1. I guess that ties in. So it should be interesting.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yep.
I'm so on board for that. All right. Now that we've covered that, let's move on to the Watchmen series that we've been reviewing. I want to cover some stuff that I actually forgot to mention last time.
Sure.
So I don't think we mentioned how in the second scene of the introduction to episode 1, how the guy who gets pulled over, the white supremacist who ends up being part of 7th Cavalry, he is listening to rap music.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, there are some statistics in the show notes that I put for our first part of this. What I'm going to do for this actually is just make the show notes one long show note, like for all 9 episodes, instead of like posting new ones every week.
Right.
So I'm just going to keep adding to it every week for those of you who actually do check that out. But yeah, there are some statistics on just how many white people happen to love hip-hop. But, it seems like a lot of them hate where it comes from. So
It comes from Eminem, obviously.
yes, Eminem, the godfather of hip-hop, the creator. Actually, quick note on that real quick is just how it does seem to be that, like, a lot of people may hate black people or the black community, but like the stuff that they create, because I think it goes back to that whole like servitude thing. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
We love what you do for us. We love the enjoyment you bring us, but we just don't like you.
Yeah, I mean, Southern food is really black food, and people they love it, right? White people love Southern food, all that, Popeye's fried chicken and all that.
Yeah, fried chicken, waffles, collard greens, stuff like that.
Exactly.
Maybe I'll do a quick dive and find out where that food came from as well, because because there's a whole like I think I heard somewhere that it was like, oh well, like this is the food that we had to cook, and now like it's co-opted as like this whole comfort food thing. It's interesting. It's interesting.
It is.
But
it
yeah,
really
so
is.
those guys listening to rap stuff. I also didn't mention much about reparations, which we can go into because the Redfordations about they kind of carry throughout all of the episodes.
Yes.
Here. But I wanted to mention it because I was actually watching an interview between Mark Bernardin from the Fat Man Beyond podcast and Damon Lindelof. Damon Lindelof, of course, being the showrunner, the individual who is responsible for this show happening. And he talked about a lot of things in this interview. It was really great about how he wanted to get such a diverse writing team and also a diverse cast. We'll talk about Lady True in a little bit, and he talks about how Lady True was like part of the casting process as well. Like, even though she was an actor, she would be there to to help them figure out who authentic Vietnamese speakers were for all the scenes they had with Vietnamese characters.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And also like how she would also be there to stop them. Even, in the writer's room, like she'd see the script and then be like, all right, this is not what this person would do. This isn't how they would act, blah, blah, blah. Here are the values of a Vietnamese person. And then they would take that back to the writer's room and work with it. So like, Damon Lindelof getting rid of ego and just, telling this story. But one thing he mentioned is the reason he put Black Wall Street in here was he was reading Ta-Nehisi Coates' The Case for Reparations and talking about how like he didn't even know that Black Wall Street, the Tulsa Massacre of 1921 happened, which is what you and I were speaking about last episode too, right?
Yep. Yeah, a lot of white people did not know about this.
Yeah, so and it's always the white people who want to talk about erasing history. You can't erase history, blah blah blah, and ignoring the part of the history where police were originally slave patrol and how all the terrible things that have happened to black people to make a case for reparations, which, I did a little bit of deep diving myself, not too deep, but I, watched an interview with Ta-Nehisi Coates, and when he talks about like how like, the history of systemic racism has actually put black people at a disadvantage, and therefore, if you are truly about like this economy and capitalism and everything, you would give everybody an equal amount so that way they can help boost this economy. Like how this country was built on the backs of black labor, but those people never saw any compensation for that labor. So therefore, while today, not people who were slaves or people who owned slaves, none of them are around today. While that is technically true, there's still a class of people who are benefiting from that labor and a class of people who are playing 300 years of catch up.
Exactly. I mean, if you had family that were slaves, you probably are still at a disadvantage, right? Like you probably still have, things that have held down your, maybe immediate members of your family, whether it's your parents or grandparents and even you yourself. So, I think it's silly when people make that argument. They think that just because slavery doesn't exist doesn't mean we still aren't feeling the effects of it. And we absolutely are. We definitely are.
Yeah, and this brought me down the rabbit hole of redlining as well, which we have show notes on that and everything. But redlining plays into sundown towns, which is something that I mentioned last time. Our friend Bronson had offered his advice as a black man who lives in Oklahoma about sundown towns. Now, do you know what sundown towns are? Or no?
I actually don't. No.
Okay, so I didn't know, I just read it, and I was like, oh, that's okay. And then friend of the podcast, Joe Armstrong, actually brought it up when I spoke with him last. And I was like, that's what a sundown town is? So I did, a little more research, but it turns out that sundown towns are towns that were made specifically to be white. And if you were a black person in there after the sun went down, you were going to be having a lot of trouble.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
Wow.
that you would be, attacked by the cops, arrested, or worse. So apparently Bronson says that sundown towns still exist. So great move on the showmakers for just choosing Oklahoma as the backdrop, because it does seem to be a place that still has a lot of that racist history.
Yep.
And is still suffering from that segregation, even if it's not on paper.
Wow.
So check that stuff out in the show notes. But we have episode 4, episode 5, and episode 6. You down to bounce around with these again?
Yeah, absolutely. So episode 4 for me, it was good, especially the first time I watched it. I enjoyed it. It was more of, the mystery being solved and, Angela finding out about her parents. But, 5 and 6 for me were where I really started to love the show. At least the first time I watched it. I'm really enjoying it on the second viewing. But those episodes really stood out to me. They just really tie the Watchmen universe together with this new season, and I thought that was really, really great.
All right, so where it seems we're going straight into episode 5 and 6, let me just throw the 3 notes that I had about episode 4 out there. Because similar to you, also I will admit I slacked off because I just wanted to kind of enjoy the show a bit. So
yeah, I feel you on that. Definitely.
Yeah, so episode 4, it brings in the egg, which now that I've seen the entire series, I know is very important. So if you're just watching it for the first time, keep an eye out for eggs. We have eggs in the first episode, in which our first introduction to Angela Abar. She's using eggs to make a smiley face and talk to Topher's classroom. I think we also see it, if it's not in the first 3 episodes, I think it is in the first 3 episodes, that Will Reeves, who is the old man she finds with the wheelchair, by the way, there's going to be a shitload of spoilers, guys, who's the old man she finds with the wheelchair, he's making himself eggs.
Yes.
While he's in a Sister Knight's hideout. And, of course, we have people who are making eggs and trying, they're hatching eggs. They're not cultivating it. What do you fucking call it? They're selling eggs.
Yeah.
Okay, we have people who are selling eggs in Oklahoma. A couple of them break while the woman's walking up the stairs. And, this is kind of the imagery of infertility. It turns out that this is a couple, I think, very purposefully named Clark. Named after Clark Kent's parents, and we do, or in homage to Clark Kent, who was raised by who was an orphan from Krypton, raised by parents who couldn't conceive. This couple can't conceive either. Of a very intimidating and wealthy and seems genius Vietnamese woman comes to them and says, "Listen, I have a baby that I've cloned for you, and I have $5 million. Take it within the next 3 minutes, or I walk." And just as they sign the paperwork, something crashes on their property, which we find out much later on what that is. But
it's such a great scene. It's so well done. She says, "Well, if you don't sign, I'm going to kill the baby, right? I'm going to destroy it." And they're just shocked. She's like, "I'm just kidding. I'll find a nice home for it." And she says she's like, "Oh, I can give you a baby," and they're like, "Oh, we don't believe you." She's like, "Oh, no, you don't understand. I'm not saying that I can make you a baby. I already did." Like, she's always ahead. You can tell she's just absolutely brilliant. Came in here, the cards are stacked in her favor. She's just, "Here you go. take it or leave it. And of course they take it.
Oh, well, yeah, it's practically an offer you couldn't refuse. That money and the legacy. And we do find out that, like, history and legacies and heritage, that those are some of the strongest themes of this entire series, is talking about, legacy and what you inherit from what came before you. Namely, did we mention in the last few episodes about Angela's grandfather? I think we did, right?
In terms of
who he is?
Besides the fact that we know he's her grandfather, I don't think we really went into it much because we didn't know yet.
Well, that was it. Yeah. But yeah, we do find out that Will Reeves, the man played by Louis Gossett Jr.,
was a police officer.
At the base of the tree. Not only is he a grandfather, but yes, he was also a police officer. And this is interesting because both he and Angela never knew each other until these last couple of episodes, until this past week in their lives, and it turns out that they both went a similar path without even knowing it.
Very
and
similar.
Of course, and we do find out that Will Reeves was motivated by this because of the man who he would watch in the old silent films, and we see this sheriff's badge, this star that is meant to be there for justice. And you'll notice that as a kid, Will Reeves had that star sewn onto his jacket lapel, or the chest of his jacket.
Yeah, it's a nice touch.
And of course, Sister Night also wears that same one.
Yeah, right.
What do we find on the Klan outfit, the supposed Klan outfit of Judd Crawford?
We also see that badge.
That same badge. So, it is interesting. And they're
legacy.
all individuals, and yeah, they're all individuals with a legacy and their own sense of justice and inheriting it. We don't even know at this point if Judd Crawford actually was a white supremacist. I know that in this episode, actually, Sister Night goes to Looking Glass and asks him, what the deal was. Like, did you know that he was part of the Klan, blah, blah, blah. And he just says he was a white man in Oklahoma. That's all you can give him. That, like, even if he is an ally, there is still some white supremacy in there, some bias, some Eurocentric, heroic view of history that even if he wasn't actually a Klansman, even if it belonged to his grandfather or something, he is still complicit, just by being a white man in Oklahoma. At the end of episode 4, I had a theory that the comedian was who killed Angela's parents in Vietnam.
Oh, I mean... wouldn't have been too shocking, to be honest, right? Definitely could have seen that happening. We also find out that Lady True and Will are working together, right? That's revealed at the end when Lori and Angela go to meet Lady True, which is also a really fun scene.
Yes,
all very, very strong female characters, and they're just awesome. They're really, really cool. Lori and Angela are just hard as nails. They're just tough, and Lady True is just brilliant. They're really great.
Yeah, the show really did a great job of having strong female characters, which is kind of like a weird term.
It is,
but it definitely passed the Bechdel test. You have women who are not subscribing to your average gender roles. They're carrying this series. And, I will say, like, I do have my own internalized misogyny. Like, as a man in society, I'm more attracted to shows and media where the men are the main characters.
Yeah, same.
With this, I really couldn't, I couldn't look away from it. Every moment that had Angela or Lori Blake in it, Lady True honestly frightens me. So
yeah, she's terrifying.
I'm not a huge fan of seeing her on screen just because she's played so well. And also this show passes the Bechdel test. I'm not sure if it did it in the first few episodes, but it definitely does here. More than 2 women characters. They both have their own names, and they both talk about something that's not a man or relationship. So
yeah, I mean, that's great. And I also think it's cool that Angela she's a working mom, right? She's the one that's a police officer. It seems like Cal's a stay-at-home dad. I like that. It really works for me. It fits into their character. The characters' or personalities. Angela's definitely not the stay-at-home type. She is a woman of action, right? She is always going to do whatever she can do to make a difference.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid representation of who she is as a character, and also their dynamic. You're right. It is like a modern idea of what a family is. It is very very relatable in that way, and it shows that she can still be like the mom and the wife and everything and still have her own life. In this case, her life is vigilantism, but she is able to quote unquote do both. As I say, get you a woman who can do both or something like that. It does show also that while her not being a stay-at-home mom, it doesn't take away from her character at all, and her and Cal have a really great partnership. But in episode 5, we're not really talking much about Angela and Cal. We're talking mostly about Looking Glass, also known as Wade, whatever his last name is.
Yeah, and this could have been a really like fillery kind of episode, like The Walking Dead does a lot of times, where they'll focus on one of those side characters and it just doesn't really drive the plot forward, or it just doesn't really grab you. But it grabbed me. I loved it. I thought his story was fantastic. He's actually a very interesting character. I know off mic you said he was like Eugene from The Walking Dead, but better. And
yes, I did say that.
Right, and I definitely see that. He's kind of just like down to the facts. He kind of talks a little strangely. And we get to really learn like why he is the way he is in one of the best openings of any episode in the series.
Yeah, and by the way, his name is Wade Tillman. That's my bad. Played expertly by Tim Blake Nelson as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, the interesting thing is that his whole origin episode, it starts off with 11/2, which is basically the Watchmen universe's 9/11. 11/2, 1985 is when a giant squid monster being puppeted by Adrian Veidt, Ozymandias, appeared in New York and administered a blast that wiped out 3 million people. 3 million people, by the way, is 1% of the population. Which a lot of people, I only know because the whole... Yeah, there's so many people who are all like, oh, well, it has a 99% survival rate. And it's like, yeah, but that 1% is 3 million people, bro.
It's kind of funny that in real life, a disease wipes out 1% of the population, nobody bats an eye. But if an alien does it, holy shit.
Yeah, in the Watchmen universe, they did this, and it made the way toward world peace.
Yeah. Ended probably a nuclear holocaust that was inevitably on the way.
Yes, it was. We talked about the doomsday clock and everything last episode. And they do a really good job in these next few episodes of taking the original, the Old Testament is what Lindelof called it when he was talking about the writer's room and everything. Taking Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' original work, and they pepper that stuff in, and they do it so well. So to see, this is when it happened, to see like what was actually going on with civilians in 1985 when 11/2 happened, it was really cool. And we see that Wade was actually, before he was Looking Glass, he was, a missionary. He came from Oklahoma to espouse the word of God to a bunch of sinners in Hoboken, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah, he suffers a humiliating sexual experience and also suffers, one of the psychic blasts from this alien squid, but he ends up surviving.
He's one of the very few lucky ones in his area to survive it.
Yeah, and it was, how cool was it just to see the actual squid? That was awesome. I was
great,
blown away that they went there.
It's such a great, you see the psychic blast go off. He kind of wanders out into this is like a carnival, right? So he wanders out of this like mirror house, and he just sees bodies everywhere. Even the girl who humiliated him is dead, and he's screaming like, "What happened?" And the camera just it comes out, and you see all these bodies, and then it moves into New York City, and you see the squid and the tentacles and crash cars. It's just such a cool visual.
It is, and I was surprised they could pull it off because it is television, like you'd think they'd have to save their budget and everything, but
You saw Game of Thrones, HBO.
Yeah, well, we saw Game of Thrones seasons like 6 through 8 when the dragons were like a thing. But
listen, you don't do Watchmen with a $5 budget, all right?
That is true. Nor should you. I mean, however, they could have, though. Like, they could have, and they still could have made it good because of how good the writing was. But we find out that Wade, who ends up being Looking Glass for the Tulsa PD, that Wade has built his entire life around this trauma. He even, despite not not getting over this trauma, hosts a support group for people who have experienced this trauma, knowing that other dimensions exist. And we find out that Wade is also, he's been studying the squid falls that are coming from the sky from who knows where to keep them scared and everything. Or at least that's what I hypothesized last episode.
Yeah, he's
here's a reminder.
He's paranoid, right? Like he wears a baseball cap with lined with the same material as his
reflectatine.
As the mask that he wears. He can't be without it because he thinks it saved his life it would save his life from a psychic blast, and he's so afraid it's going to happen again. Like you said, his entire life revolves around this. And I thought what was an interesting trait of his was, when he goes to visit his ex-wife to give her the pills from Angela to examine, she makes a comment to him about she spent 7 years trying to convince him she wasn't going to leave him with his pants down, like that a woman wouldn't do that to him again. So he obviously also had some very, very, some trauma, some sexual trauma there from what that woman did to him right before the psychic blast, where I don't think he can really trust a woman to not leave him, I guess high and dry, or and something along those lines. So that was a little, it's a little part, but I thought that does add to his character a lot too.
It was an awesome line because we do see Looking Glass as kind of a Rorschach. He's the new Rorschach, basically, right? And really quick, I just want to digress for a sec because, so I started looking around on Instagram and finding the Watchmen HBO page and sharing stuff from there, and then liking it and trying to get the podcast name out there basically. And in the first episode posts, I saw a lot of people just bitching about the show, and they were like, where is the man who is a god and drifts away further every day? Where is the vigilante who won't compromise even in the face of Armageddon? Where's this? Where's that? And this is all bullshit, blah blah blah. But it's like, if you watch the show, you'll realize all the stuff you loved about Watchmen is in this show.
Yeah.
It's literally just people who don't like that it's talking about race.
I think so too. I think they don't want to have to deal with that on a constant basis. But those things are there. Like, Watchmen is there, but this is many years later, and it's showing you, what is the fallout of that world, right? When the Watchmen comic takes place, they're at the end of mass vigilantes. Like they're winding down. They're being outlawed. And this, this alien attack that Adrian Veidt created happens. It's going to change the world, and we're seeing that world later. And while we didn't end in a nuclear holocaust, as we know, humans inevitably turn on each other anyway. So, I think that's what we're seeing here, and what better way to express that than through white supremacy, through the Seventh Cavalry and things like that. So I feel like they did a great job of capturing Watchmen while presenting in a modern setting that is similar enough to our world, while also capturing what happened in the history of that world.
And even more so, I'm not going to spoil the next 3 episodes after the ones we're covering, but there's so many threads that more left when Watchmen was finished, the original comic book. Lori Blake, she wasn't done being a vigilante anymore. She wanted to get a little more hardcore. So she went off with Night Owl. And Dr. Manhattan said, I'm going to leave this world and go create life, somewhere else. And we're wondering, where Adrian Veidt went off to and stuff like that. What do you do after you save the world? Like, they left a lot of threads, and guess what? This series ties up 99% of them.
It does.
Okay, I'll tell you right now, and it may not be a spoiler, maybe, but we don't find out what happens to Night Owl, unfortunately. Like, that's actually something that if they ever did do another season, that's something I would want to see. What happened to Night Owl?
I would love that. Yeah, kind of. Where is he? What happened to him? There could be some great stuff there. Actually, they could show him and Lori and how they got to where they are now.
Yeah, but if people could just get over their prejudices, their biases, the whole, guess what? The heroes you love might actually bring out your biases in you. I saw people that were pissed that the Rorschach clan, the 7K, that they were racists, and I'm like, yeah, racists are the bad guys, and they're like, oh, only because the writer made them that way. Yes, that's how writing fucking works.
Yeah,
You
like if it
make
was
a
anything
character
else,
that
you
way.
wouldn't complain, right? When you watch 24 and there's like a Muslim terrorist, do they go, "Oh, come on, really? Why is he a
That's a good
terrorist?
point.
Why are they doing that? Because the writers made him that way." Well, that's that's because the writers did it. No, they don't complain then. But you make some white people the bad guy. Whoa, all right, we got an issue here. Like, come on, like give me a break.
Yeah.
Anybody can be
Well,
the
I mean-
bad guy in any writing, right?
Yes, and I mean, white people play bad guys all the time.
They are.
It usually
In real
happens
life.
in movies. Yeah, yes, that's true. White people are bad guys a lot. But like even in our movies and comic books and everything, white people play the bad guys all the time. It's just the fact that they're racist.
Yeah. Well, then
That the
they should
racist
be
part of them is
Russians,
bad.
or they should be serial killers. They shouldn't be, average Oklahomans. I don't know what they call themselves. Oklahomians. I don't know.
No, I think Oklahomian Rhapsody. No, Oklahoman sounds right. I'll have to ask Bronson about that one too.
I don't know.
I'm actually gonna have to bring up another text that he sent me.
Oh.
But in the meantime, yeah. So if you get past your own bullshit and realize that this is actually, it's a continuation of Watchmen, and it actually it ties up some great threads, and then leaves some of its own that are brilliant as well. But yeah, we find out that Wade's whole life is built on this trauma, and that he even has an alarm system which he's using to run drills. You're only supposed to run. It's like an interdimensional alarm. You're only supposed to run those drills, I think, once every 6 weeks. But his is broken because he runs them several times a week.
Yeah,
because
you
he
can
just
see how
doesn't wanna be
scared he
vulnerable.
is, right? When he calls to get a replacement, they're like, no, God damn it, like this should be working. Like, you need to send me a replacement overnight. Like, I cannot wait. He's willing to pay whatever it costs to get another unit because he's so scared. Like, I never really thought about it after reading the comic or even in the first couple episodes. But like, imagine surviving that experience. And you don't know that Adrian Veidt did it, right? As the reader, we know it. But if you're a person in that universe, you think an alien squid came and wiped out all those people. It must be terrifying to have experienced that, to see its effects. So, I get it. The trauma there is incredible. And I think, it's really interesting that he tries to help other people with his help group when he very much needs help himself. But we also get to see his full-time job or supposed job because people don't know he's a police officer, and that's
his day job.
Yeah, his day job where he's like a focus group. I don't know, what would you call observer? I guess, right?
Yeah, so he can see the truth in anything, and I'm not sure if it's a superpower or if it's just who he is. But
I think it might be because of what happened to him when he was with that girl. Maybe he just.
Do you think it's an ability that was bestowed upon him by the psychic attacks, or you think
I just think he knows people now. I think he studies people because of that.
I like that, and that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, but yeah, he actually is capable of watching focus groups and determining if they're being honest. Like on paper, they might write that they loved a product, but it turns out they hated it and they just didn't want to say so.
Yeah.
And he's able to find that. He is able to find the truth, and yet his entire life has been guided by something he'll never really know the truth for until the very end of this episode. He wants to know why the squid came and where these other little squids are coming from. And
everyone does, right? I mean, that's
yeah. And everyone has their own theories. Earlier on in a few episodes that, everyone go, oh, it's the government doing it. It's Redford. Who,
yeah.
By the way, Redford was another string that was left untied. From what I understand, Lindelof mentioned that, while in the movie they say Ronald Reagan, and they say, oh, we'll never have a cowboy president or whatever. Apparently in the book, it's RR. There's looks of RR running for president.
Well, in the show, they also bring up Ronald Reagan. There's like Reagantown or Reaganville or whatever that little town is with all the white supremacists.
It's Nixonville.
Oh, you're right. Nixon. You're right. It is Nixonville.
Yeah, they all love Nixon. So it turns out that it wasn't going to be like Lindelof was like, okay, Robert Redford, and what a great play on us actually having a cowboy president, which was Ronald Reagan. Except in their world, he actually did the right thing by marginalized communities. It was very much the opposite of what Reagan did. But yeah, so and can I read Bronson's edition before we get to the thing that's going to change the entire series?
Oh, you're talking about the end of the episode? I did want to just really quick point out that first focus group that he does, it's a commercial for moving back to New York.
Yes.
They're like, oh, I moved back here for the Italian food and the pizza, or like I love it. The streets are so safe now, and like they're all these like smiling people. And everyone's like, I'd move there. They're all like checking off. Yeah, we'd go there, and he's like, nah, it's bullshit. Nobody's moving back there. Fucking alien squid landed and killed 3 million people. Nobody's going back. So I thought that was a cool scene. I really liked that touch.
it was, and I loved also just seeing his his day job, right? Like I said, what he does as a civilian, because they all have to have cover jobs.
Yeah.
Remember, cops, you cannot know who a cop is, and you cannot know that somebody is.
And he actually does it, unlike Angela, who has a bakery that's fake.
Yes,
right?
She has a fakery.
And he also joined up with the police after the night in which all the cops were attacked, which I thought was kind of interesting too.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that fact. After the White Night. Yep. Like nobody wants to become a cop after the White Night.
And then he does. He joins up, and part of me is like, is it because he can wear the mask? The reflectatine, I think it's called, right?
Yeah, that's perfect. It's reflectatine.
He can wear it all the time. I don't know. Maybe he wants to just make a difference somehow. But yeah, I thought that was a cool trait as well.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. We also see that like he asks for the reflectatine to be delivered with the new alarm system as well. Let me read this bit about Tulsa real quick. So once again, our friend, black man in Oklahoma, he says, if I may add, Tulsa is still racially divided by the railroad tracks. Not even gentrification, just white side and black side. And the only part of Oklahoma I don't feel safe in is Guthrie and straight north up the middle of the state. Like if I stop for gas for more than 5 minutes, I'm looking around and over my shoulder.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
Oklahoma, still racist, and
that's powerful, man.
It is. I couldn't imagine like
hearing someone that we know say that. It's like you can read about it in the news, you can read it online, but when you actually know the person and they tell you they feel that way, it's it really hits home. You know what I mean? Even if you haven't, us being white guys haven't experienced that, it's like, man, you don't want someone you care about to feel that way. You don't want anyone to feel like that.
Yeah. You don't. So let's get. I don't have a good segue.
Yeah.
So we learn more about 11-2 and that it was an inside job. We already know that Adrian Veidt made it happen, but a woman in the recovery group ends up going for a drink with Wade, and he ends up being led to them all on purpose.
He doesn't have the superpower because he can't see through her. That's why.
That's true.
She fools him.
I thought that she was telling the truth. That's why. That she really said that she really thought he was cute. I thought that's what he banked on.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely was telling truth to him, I think, because he could tell through, like, when she lied about her occupation, like she was definitely using the truth to manipulate him.
But he couldn't, on a supernatural level, he wouldn't be able to tell the truth, which is what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, he ends up following her and finding out that the videos from 7 Cavalry's propaganda are actually made not in a church, but in a set that's in this warehouse. And he's led there on purpose, where the 7K, they kidnap him and they show him hours of proof that 11-2 was an inside job. There's a video that Adrian Veidt recorded for President Redford. And upon seeing this, he discovers that the entire, like, the one moment that defined his life, it happened, but it was orchestrated to happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's traumatizing. He thought it was aliens this whole time, and it was done to him by a man, a human man. And also Senator Keene is here, right? He's in charge of the 7th Cavalry. And he has his mask on, and Looking Glass Wade says to him, are you even going to try to disguise your voice, Senator? Like, he knows immediately. And I have this stupid mask. It's not for you, it's for them. Senator Keene tries to tell him, like, they're idiots. I had to step in to get them in line, to protect people. He tries to sell it like he's doing this heroic thing by not allowing them to just go off, half-cocked and killing people. He's like, I have a bigger plan. We're gonna make the world safer. Trust me on this.
Yeah, his whole premise is like that he's playing, both sides and trying to keep everybody safe and working for the greater good. But, again, we see a charismatic politician who is emboldening white supremacy and, continuing to play both sides, but for his own gain. And of course, he gives Wade a lesser of two evils a scenario in which they know who Angela is, and if Wade gives her up and gets her out of the way while she's arrested, then they'll let her and her family live. If not, they go and murder her whole family anyway. So Wade is now like put, there's a morality question here. Does he let his, one of his coworkers, one of his fellow vigilantes, fellow peacekeepers, does he let her and her family die, or does he get her arrested in order to, keep her safe? And of course,
it's a tough spot because in a way he's the only one she trusted with this information, right? Like she brought him the pills. Nobody else knows about this. So, there's definitely like I don't know if I call it a friendship, but there's definitely like a trust between him and Angela, and for him to betray her, that's bad. That's big that's going to weigh on him, but he also doesn't want her to die, right? He doesn't want her family to suffer. So, he's given this horrible choice by Pete Buttigieg, because this guy reminds me a lot of him, honestly. The way he talks, right? He seems like the all-American, like kind guy. That's all I could think of when I saw this guy.
He really does. Wow.
I was like, oh boy.
Little rat fuck.
Yes.
But yeah, and so this also takes 7K, and they're not just the KKK anymore; they're also QAnon.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Because now they believe in this conspiracy theory. The only difference is they have proof. Like
there actually was a conspiracy.
Yeah, that there actually was a conspiracy, and that the world peace is based upon a lie. And the interesting part here though is that they don't like the fact that the president, who is supposedly taking away their rights, was put in place by like a sham. The election was rigged, not rigged as in votes, but as in Adrian Veidt predicted everything would go the way it did. Like he orchestrated everything years in advance because he is the world's smartest man. But yeah, so we have like, some conspiracy stuff in there, some white supremacy stuff. Wade ends up selling Angela out to the new like interim chief of police, like the new person running those operations, and it's Lori Blake from the FBI.
Yep.
So so they're trying to figure out what the deal is with these pills and everything. Turns out the pills are called nostalgia, and that they're now outlawed, but they were originally memories that were harvested into capsule form that you could take in order to kind of like relive your life and relearn from things and make yourself a better person.
Well, it's supposed to battle dementia. I think they also mentioned like people.
That's right. That's right.
It's a great way to try to keep remembering who you are. But unfortunately, wasn't always successful, so they did outlaw it.
Yeah, and whereas these pills belong to Angela's grandfather, who we find out, we did mention that he was the little boy, right? That he was the little boy who escaped Tulsa.
I don't know if we did, but yeah, definitely. We should mention that.
Yeah, Angela. I'm not sure. It must be the episode before this because she goes to the Heritage Center. And yes, she does. Yes, she goes to the How the fuck did we skip that in episode 3? We were we were rushing on the last one. But yeah, she goes to the Heritage Center and finds out that her grandfather, Will Reeves, was the little boy at the beginning of the series who managed to escape. And that right there, I didn't realize at the beginning, that's also a Superman allegory.
Oh, interesting.
The whole thing, yeah. I didn't realize that until it was brought up in that interview with Lindelof, and I'm like, man, I'm a bad comic book fan. Of course it was. It's exactly what it was.
Right.
And so Angela ends up down before they can confiscate the pills from her. She downs all of them, and that leads us into episode 6. I'll talk about the ending of 5, but it is going to lead into episode 6, where Angela is now overdosing on nostalgia pills and reliving her grandfather's entire life.
Yeah.
Seeing everything from his point of view, living his memories. But at the end of episode 5, Wade, he ends up throwing out the brand new alarm system that was given to him, probably because like he realizes that there is no other dimension. This was, a complete hoax and everything. And it kind of made me wonder, Ty, I don't know if it made you wonder too, but like, was he going to join the 7th Cavalry or something? Like not as a racist, but
yes,
as somebody...
I definitely, that's where I thought it was going. I was like, well, I mean, like now that he knows they're trying to expose this conspiracy, his whole life's been shaped by it. It makes sense for him to join them. I don't think he wants to kill the police or the people he's been working with, but he wants to expose this truth. But I like that he walks back and he takes the alarm back out of the garbage because he still has that doubt. right? And he brings it
Yeah.
back into the house because just in case it does happen again, just in case that's not true, there's still that chance it could happen. We also didn't mention that they were trying to open a portal again, the 7th Cavalry.
Oh yeah, we find out that they've been using portal technology, and we don't know what for yet, but that it's illegal, and they've been using technology to open another portal, which obviously Wade's not a fan of.
Yeah,
that's
what caused it
in the first place.
But here at the end, after he walks back into the house with the alarm system, we see a van pull up, and several 7th Cavalry members come out armed to the teeth. And it looks like they're going to storm in and most likely kill Wade. They used him for what they needed. They got Angela out of the way, and now they're going to take him out because they don't really want him on their side. He's probably a liability because he doesn't align with all their values, right? And he's a very smart person, so they probably don't want him to be there all the time. And we see that Keene was using him, right? That's what politicians do, and Keene has used him, gotten what he wanted, and now he's going to take him off the board.
Yeah, and we don't see him for the next few episodes. We don't really know what happens to him after that.
Yeah.
But for him, for me at least, grabbing the alarm back was also him stating that he is still the same person.
Yep.
Not necessarily the same like broken person, but still like that he won't abandon his values just because. Like, listen, like things are the way they are now, and even though he knows why they are that way. He's still got to live in this world. He still knows certain things are right, certain things are wrong, who the good guys are, the bad guys are, and he'll still move forward from there. That's kind of how I see it.
And I really, at this point in the episode, even on the first watch, I did think legitimately he did turn Angela over to help her. He says to her like, "I had no choice."
Oh yeah,
he didn't do it to help the 7th Cavalry so much as like he doesn't want her to be killed. So I think that he intentionally did that to help her.
Yeah. So speaking of Angela. Episode 6 starts off. Now, episode 6 is
a wild ride.
Yeah, and it's one of the best episodes of the series. It's definitely, if not the best, maybe second best. But yeah, it turns out that she's living her grandfather's life, Will Reeves, and so she gets to relive the whole her father coming back from World War I, as a black man, and fighting for a country that hates him, and then having to get his son out of Black Wall Street, where things are exploding, and like literally his parents explode right after. I don't know how I didn't make the connection that this is a Superman story.
Yeah.
Then again, the Superman story is a Moses story. So whatever.
Right.
It's not but yeah, so not only was he one of the few survivors of this massacre, but he ends up being the first wait, should I say it or should I talk about how he becomes a cop first?
No, it's okay. Let's just say it.
I don't want to bury the lead. He's the first mass superhero.
He's the first vigilante.
Yes, he becomes Hooded Justice.
Which is interesting because Hooded Justice is always portrayed as a white man. We never truly see his face. He's the only vigilante who refused to ever take off his mask, they say. But his eyes look, around it, the skin is white. So it's definitely a pretty shocking reveal, but it's done very, very well. And it definitely makes sense the way they explain it. Whether Alan Moore ever meant that, I don't know. But I don't think it takes anything away from the original work or from the character.
Yeah, and speaking of Alan Moore, in the original Watchmen book, there were theories hypothesized that Hooded Justice actually did have a relationship with Captain Metropolis.
Yeah.
Because I saw a lot of people were also upset online that, we see in the American hero story that's on TV throughout this series that Hooded Justice ends up having a sordid relationship, a gay relationship with Captain Metropolis. And that actually comes from the original book. It was alluded to.
Yep.
And they even gave a little bit of it in the movie, which isn't the exact same canon, but if you look in the beginning montage where Bob Dylan's playing, where they do like a whole Last Supper homage while Sally Jupiter's pregnant. Over on the one side of the table is Captain Metropolis talking to Hooded Justice, and the two of them are very close to each other. So, I did think that was interesting. It might not have been on purpose. Zack Snyder, he's obviously a solid filmmaker, but he is also a bro. Maybe he missed it.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
But yeah, so it turns out that her grandfather, Will Reeves, went on to join the police department, and his badge was actually put on by Samuel Battle, who in real life is America's first black police officer.
That's pretty cool.
Which I didn't know until this morning. So I'm very glad I went into that. I want to let you tell the rest of the story actually. But before that, I just want to talk about one of the themes that I'm not sure if it's a theme of it is the theme of this episode actually. I remember that Lindelof mentioned it. I wasn't sure if it was just me. You know how I read into shit. But this episode and this whole series now is really about not just legacy but also generational trauma, which is a real thing.
Yes.
You inherit the trauma of those before you. Check the show notes and sources. We'll have it in there. There's some really great academics speaking on it and speaking on, how, like, even if you're a black person, you still have a Eurocentric view of history and viewing white people as the heroes, and how back during slavery, if somebody came to your son and said, like, oh, he's doing great, he's working really hard, you would talk shit about your son and say, no, he's not that great, he's giving me trouble, blah, blah, blah. So that way he wasn't sold. So your son wouldn't be sold. And how that has carried itself into today, how you see that white parents are so proud of their children. And that, there are black parents who might be like, oh, they'll only talk about the bad things about their kids, even if they are very, very academic. I'm not saying this from personal experience. I'm saying this based on the video that, that's in the show notes. But like, I never thought about it before. But yeah, like, we do inherit. And if not just talking about the racist part of it, talk about, like the shit I took from my father that I still have today because the way he grew up. And the stuff you probably have from your parents through today because the way they grew up.
Exactly.
That's what this whole episode is. And, they have a great nod to Amos and Andy, too. Amos and Andy, of course, was a minstrel show. Minstrel shows are about, black people, caricatures of black people, made to subvert them and continue spreading stereotypes about them. But yeah, so we find out that her grandfather, Will Reeves, became a black cop he's been black, that he became a cop in New York City. And how does he find out about Cyclops?
So he moves in New York City because he needs a fresh start from Oklahoma, right after the horrible experience he had in Tulsa. So him and his wife move there. He becomes a police officer. He wants to make a difference. He's been inspired to stop this evil and help the world. So
his hero was a cop as a kid.
Yeah, exactly. So he makes his first arrest. There's this very openly racist, angry white male who he sees. I think he throws
I think he throws a Molotov cocktail in a Jewish business.
Yep, like a Jewish deli or something. And
Jewish deli.
And he obviously sees this Will and he stops the man, and the man's like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't worry about it. So he arrests him and he takes him into police headquarters. And they're like, oh, wow, great job. We'll take him from there. And they make like a symbol, right, with their hand. And then at the point they take him away, and Will's a little confused. He's like, okay, but he figures, whatever. I'm the new guy. They're going to book him. I did my job.
And at first it seems like his fellow cops are his allies too, right?
They're like, great job, rookie. Like, you did great. They're all seem to be like patting him on the back almost. Like, all right, we'll take it from here.
And they won't let his collar talk shit to him either.
Yep. Yeah, they show him some respect, they say, right? Yeah, it's like, and it seems like, all right, like this is going well. This is great. This is what he was looking for.
Not only do they take his collar away from him and make that weird sign on their forehead, but it turns out things are much more nefarious.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, Cyclops. There's, I guess they're like a white supremacist group too, or
Yeah, they're definitely Klan members, but I guess similar to how like Hydra was the like science offshoot of the Nazis in like Marvel Comics, how like Cyclops, while they're Klan members and white supremacists, they have their own like nefarious scientific deeds, and they try to keep Will Reeves off their tracks, but it backfires on them. Yeah,
because Will proves quickly that he's not going to just step to the side and let these things happen. So he actually, winds up finding out that this man has been released from prison, like that same day, right? And, he storms back into police headquarters, and he goes to the guy at the desk, and he's like demanding what happened. And the guy at the desk just, kind of like whispers to him, like, keep your voice down. I'm trying to protect you here. Just let it go, And Will's questioning about the hand symbol he saw. And this guy, it seems like the guy at the desk may not be involved with Cyclops, but he knows of it. He knows enough to kind of just, look the other way, right? And he's kind of telling Will to do the same thing. He's like, listen, if you know what's good for you, just forget it and move on. And Will can't. He just can't let that go. And he winds up being assaulted by his fellow police officers shortly later, right? They wound up telling him, come for a drink with us. He's like, no, I'm good. He's walking home.
He knows. He's like, no, I'm good, guys. I don't want anything to do with you.
I mean, he's seen Tulsa. He knows what's up. So, they wound up. It looks like they take off. He goes down an alley, and sure enough, they pull up in front of him, and they beat the living hell out of him. And then they actually hang him from a tree, but they don't actually kill him, right? They kind of like string him up by the noose. They tell him that if he doesn't, back off, that they're gonna kill him. They're gonna kill his family, right? They're basically threatening him, and then they let him live, but they definitely make their message, sent across to him, and so he won't forget it.
Through this, he ends up keeping the ropes that were tied around his hands. He ends up keeping the noose that was around his neck and the hood that they put over his head as well. And he's just kind of like, on his way home with these things, trying to reconcile with what just happened. Like, he became one of the good guys, but the good guys are also bad guys. And like, he does have like this anger in him, and he sees like some guys trying to assault a couple, and he puts the hood on and lets that anger out. And finally, we do see that while this Hooded Justice, this Hooded Justice like documentary series may be a little inaccurate, it kind of is accurate. He was a very brutal hand-to-hand combatant. Like, he wouldn't, he wouldn't let criminals get away with shit. He
was angry, and he was taking that anger out on people that may have deserved it, and I love the idea that he adopts this noose as part of his outfit, and he wears it around his neck, and it makes so much sense, right? Black people were known for being lynched, for being hanged, and he takes that and he turns it into a vigilante symbol that he's known for. He winds up inspiring generations of costumed heroes later on. And it's really powerful stuff, to see that. And his wife is actually very supportive of him doing this. She's the one, I believe, that comes up with the idea to paint his eyes white, to around or the skin around it, so that they don't know it's a black man doing it, and it'll be more supportive maybe, and it'll help hide his identity. So she convinces him to do this, and I thought this was really cool because we see Angela paints her eyes black when she becomes Sister Night. It's right, like it's a
that's great.
Very
like
similar, but the juxtaposition of it. So in the present day, she's openly embracing, I'm black, and here we go. And back then he had to hide it and pretend that he was white. And very powerful stuff. And he winds up taking the fight to Cyclops, and he attacks, a group of them. I think they're behind a butcher shop that the original man he arrested owns, right? So like he kind of like fights his way through there, like brutally dispatches.
Well, I think he took over that shop. I think it was the Jewish deli. And
I
think he took it over after it burnt down this motherfucker.
Yep.
So he burned it down, took it over, and then this is where the scene that they reenacted very differently in the fake docuseries. We see what actually happened. That it wasn't just Hooded Justice fighting bad guys. It was Hooded Justice beating down racists.
Yep.
We do see that a lot, like this whole whitewashing of history and all this stuff. And it's like, even then we fought the Nazis, fighting and killing racists.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's why people are why they might have been caught off guard by, the people taking the Rorschach mask and being like, oh, well, they're not actually racist. They're just extreme blah, blah. No, they're racist. We see that all of our politicians use those words. We see evil and hate and blah, blah, blah. Call it racism. Even now we see the shits, and please don't let this fucking get normalized. The term officer-involved shooting or police-involved shooting. Call it what it is. the police killed a man or the police murdered a man
Yes.
or woman or whatever it is. Because guess what? Like, if you legitimately killed someone in the line of duty and there was no other way, let the investigation go through and you'll be fine. Okay, if somebody pulls a gun on you and you shoot them, okay, in order to save your life and whatever, then fine. But guess what? If it's somebody that didn't, George Floyd, murder. That was a murder.
What do they always say?
You know?
If you did nothing wrong, you have nothing to be worried about, right? So,
That's what they say. Yeah, so it works both ways. And, let me throw in Yellowstone real quick. One of the characters I mentioned in Yellowstone, he's a veteran. And, something happens in the show where they're like, oh, why didn't you take care of that guy or whatever? And he says, listen, I've killed more people than any other man I know, but I've never murdered one.
Oh, I love that. That's a great line.
Yeah, and that was a beautiful line. It's a really good show. When you get into it, it's going to be what you and I do. Like, I got into Supernatural 7 years after you liked it.
Yes, true.
It's going to be the same thing. 10 years from now, you're going to be like, dude, Yellowstone's so good. And I'm like, I know, right?
About time.
But yeah, I also want to talk a bit about how, a lot of this stuff is based in real life. That, even if you are a police officer, if you're black, you're still getting discriminated against. And I also want to talk about, there's this one podcast I listened to called Shrink Tank, only for their Watchmen review. I didn't discover them before this, but I wanted to see what other people's takes on this were.
Yeah.
And and they related it to Nolan's Batman. In Batman Begins, Alfred says, "Why bats?" And he goes, "Because bats frighten me. It's time my enemies shared my dread."
Yes.
And so now we see Hooded Justice, instead of being in a white hood, he's in a black hood. And so now criminals and racists, he doesn't go after racists specifically, but they just also happen to be criminals. But criminals now know that they have to fear the noose and the hood.
Yeah,
now they're
it's
feeling
great.
the same fear that black people feel every day. And it was so well done. And actually, because you talked about his wife, June, can I just talk about how I think when he was becoming a cop, she told him that he was joining the bad guys.
Yeah. I think she feels that him being a vigilante is the better way to make a difference. The police are the bad guys, so why don't you, take the fight to all of them? Go outside the box and really bring justice. And his wife, we do find out, was the baby from Tulsa that he had saved, which is a little weird in some ways, but
yeah, but he was only 7 years old.
Yeah. I guess it's just they were so
weird.
close.
I missed that part. Damn it! I don't know how I missed that, but thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, she was that baby. So they while she may have been too young to remember, they do have that similar experience. They're both survivors from Tulsa. Their parents were both killed there. Very well, they may have been the only people they had for each other, and they grew very close, and now they're married, and he shares his secrets with her, and we'll later learn not all of his secrets, but we think most of them. She knows that he's a vigilante and helps him with this journey.
Yeah, and much like blues and rock and roll and hip hop and a bunch of other great black art forms, it inspires others to appropriate it and make it their own.
Yep.
So he is the first superhero, and then this spawns a whole bunch of other superheroes, one of which being Captain Metropolis, who turns out the Bio series did get this right, did end up having a relationship with Hooded Justice, with Will Reeves, who, by the way, took his name from Bass Reeves, the Black Marshal of Oklahoma, who was the guy in all the silent movies.
Yeah.
Who, once again, he wore a cloak and something hood-like, and then Hooded Justice wears a hood, and then, of course, Sister Night also wears a hood. And these are, she wasn't aware of any of this and still ended up inheriting this legacy and following that way.
Yeah.
It's so,
cool.
So great. But yeah, so and we do see that when he is with the Minutemen, that he's talking about hey, let's solve racism, and none of them know he's black except for Captain Metropolis, who is fine with having sex with a black man, but doesn't want anybody to know that he's fighting crime alongside.
He says, it's a shame the others can't know about you. They're not as they aren't as tolerant as I am. He says. He uses the word tolerant, which I thought was wow.
Not just accepting, but
yeah, and he's like, they'll never see how beautiful you are, and it's it's definitely, it's an interesting perspective. It's one of those things where I think maybe Captain Metropolis doesn't realize he's racist. He obviously he cares about him, but he's maybe embarrassed to be seen with the black man. He doesn't want others to know. That's And that's the tough spot. You know, Will is truly on his own. He can only give a piece of him to each of these people, but he can't, you know, when he's with Captain Metropolis, he can you know, be with someone that he loves. You know, he can be gay, but he can't openly be a black man with him. And then the same thing with his wife. You know, he can be a black man with her, but he can't truly, you know, live his truth either, because, you know, he is in love with a man. So it's a tough spot to be in, and he starts pulling away from people. And it hurts his relationships. It hurts his relationship with his wife and his son. You know, and it's sad to see how, you know, he became such a loner. And, you know, we start to see how and why Angela didn't know about him.
Yeah, but real quick before that, you know, I think it also plays back to this idea of like the whole I can't be racist, I have a black blank. You know, I have a black friend, I have a black boyfriend, I have a black girlfriend, I have a black husband. I can't be racist, I have a black cousin, or whatever it is. And, you know, it's the idea that those people who believe they are your allies, you know, think of the Judd Crawford, who was a real sweetheart, ended up actually being part of 7K, you know, but the people who we think are our allies, you know, they still have white supremacy within their bones and all of their beliefs. I have it, you have it. Anyone who is raised in America, no matter what color you are, you have that. And it may not be as blatant, but it's still there. You know, you may not outright say like, oh, I don't like black people, but you might be like, you know, I'm for redlining or something like that, or I'm for like voter ID laws, or I'm for the prison industrial complex. You know, I want to be hard on crime. So right there, you may not realize it, but you are espousing white supremacist ideals.
Yes, exactly.
And yeah, and even when Hooded Justice is talking to the media, saying like, you know, I found these like, you know, these Klan members, blah blah blah. Like before he can even say it, Captain Metropolis cuts him off and goes, yes, Moloch, and he's you know, it's gonna be rough, like, you know, fighting Moloch, and like all these people are there fighting crime with them, but they're not fighting the true crime, the crime that has survived all the way to this day, which is white supremacy. And like you said, it does really drive Hooded Justice to, you know, to lose his shit. Like he stops beating up white supremacists, and when he discovers what these Klan members, part of Cyclops, are really up to, he fucking murks them. He's shooting them in the head.
Yeah. Well, that guy he originally arrested, he wasn't able to stop him 2 times before. So when he finally sees him again, he just shoots him in the head. He kills him. You know, he's done. He's done dancing around. He's done, you know, seeing this man on the street ruining people's lives. And then, like you said, he goes into this like warehouse, and he just brutally dispatches everyone in there.
And while he's in this warehouse, he finds out Cyclops' true plot, which is to use strobe lighting and other forms of subliminal messaging and programming to make black people behave erratically, make them behave like the savages people believe them to be. And it can be done through, let's say, movies. Because I believe, oh yes, that's right, he stumbles upon this movie theater where there was this huge fight and the cops had to break it up and black people were at the center of it, and they send him in and they're like, all right, they need one of their own in there or whatever. And that's how he ends up finding out that, you know, obviously this is, you know, this is a play on stuff that happens in real life, but he's saying that, like, you know, basically white people are programming black people to behave in such a way that justifies their treatment of the black community.
Yeah.
I think I put that pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah, you know, he finds this warehouse where, you know, I believe there's a man on a radio, like sending messages and things, and he kills them all. You know, he kills everyone in here to try to put a stop to this, because he's seen firsthand, you know, the carnage that they created in that movie theater. And he sees, you know, black people suffering, and no one wants to stop them, including the Minutemen. You know, they want to glorify it by fighting others, you know, supervillains and masked villains and things like that. But they don't actually want to stop, you know, racism, which has been inherent for so long. It's you know, it's a horrible spot for him to be in, especially being the first vigilante, and, you know, and having lost. You know, he kind of lost his way for a little bit, and seeing, you know, people taking on the role and not supporting his ideals. So it's, you know, it's hard. And you know, he goes home after this, right? And he sees his son trying to dress up like him, and he's like, "Look, you know, Dad, I'm like you," and he just loses it. You know, he doesn't want that. He doesn't want to see his son have to take up being a vigilante like him. And his wife she's had enough at this point. She tells him that it's time for, her and the son to move back to Oklahoma. They're not going to be a party to this charade anymore. He doesn't want to be with them, so they're not going to be with him.
Yeah, and I just want to bring up this really poignant point that I noticed. So Angela drank these pills and is reliving her grandfather's entire life. There's a scene where the two of them are in bed post-coitus. I think she remembers fucking her grandma now.
Oh, yeah.
That's the most traumatizing part of all of this.
Oh, God, yeah.
Is that she now remembers fucking her own grandmother. Wow. And also Captain Metropolis, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
Now that's legacy.
Well, this episode's really, really cool too from, a filmmaking standpoint. It's in black and white. And we see a lot of times through this scene, it'll shift between Will and Angela. So, it'll be Will, maybe the camera will move behind his back, and then when it comes back up to his face, it's Angela, or, when it's talking to someone, and it constantly goes back and forth to remind you, yes, this is Will's story, but Angela's here. She's present. She's living it. And the whole time, her husband, Cal, is trying to get her back. He's reading things to her. He's begging her to remember who she is. Lori Blake's talking to her, and, Lori being, Lori, she's like, oh, it's really fucked up, yeah. This is crazy. You got to give me permission to pump your stomach here, things like that. And we go back to the present for just a few seconds, and then it's back into to Will's story. And this does eventually lead to the hanging of Judd. And we find out that Will used that same strobing effect that Cyclops used to control him. And he has him walk, push him over to the tree, pushes the wheelchair, and he says to him, he's like, so we find out he knew there was a Klansman robe in the closet, right? He says, you had one in your closet. Uh-huh. He's like, well, that's my grandfather's legacy. And he's like, well, if you're so proud of it, why are you hiding it? And Judd doesn't really have a response to that because he's probably torn too. Maybe part of him really does like Angela. Maybe he doesn't openly believe he's a racist, but at the same time, he has this Klansman robe that he can't dispose of. And we see that Will tells him to hang himself, and that's how he did it. We didn't know. Did he have psychic powers? Was he really super strong? No. He used that same strobing effect that he stopped Cyclops from using, and he had Judd kill himself.
And there's a lot to unpack there too, right? Like, do you have to become as bad as the monsters you fight in order to beat them?
Yep.
Did Judd, I don't think you and I want to believe that Judd really was a bad guy 100% through, because
it's hard.
It is. And,
they make him likable. You see how good he was with Angela and her kids.
But yeah, we don't want to believe that because because he does seem to be an ally and he does seem to be hard on crime. And, I think we end up finding out, we already know that he's definitely a member of 7K, and, we end up finding that he was kind of put into that position as the chief. So they put one of their own in the police department, which also happens in real life, and went from there. But I do wonder, if in getting to know Cal and Angela and their family and everything, I wonder if his ideas of how he felt about white supremacy did soften up, and if maybe he just thought well, I'm doing this because I want to get Redford out of office and I want to expose the conspiracy.
Well, maybe he thought he was keeping them safe. You know what I mean? Like the way the senator kind of puts it, they were just running wild beforehand. Now I'm protecting people. Maybe Judd thinks this is the best way to keep people safe. So there's no more white knight. There's, he keeps a balance between the police force and the 7th Cavalry, and no one else has to die for it. Maybe deep down that's what he believes. We don't know. We don't know this. And it's hard for Angela because she's reliving this hanging from Will's perspective. A man that she thought of as a close friend and an uncle to her kids, and someone she really respected, that she's learned all these secrets about. Now she's watching him die, and
she's doing it.
And she's doing it. I can only imagine how that must feel. It's got to be very difficult for her.
And yeah, I guess she also has to confront how, not only does she remember murdering her best friend, but she remembers her father fighting against all these white supremacists and stuff like that. And or her grandfather, excuse me.
yeah.
She remembers her grandfather fighting against all these white supremacists and stuff. And, like, she's got to be wondering, like, was I destined to become Sister Knight from the beginning? Did I ever have a choice?
Yeah.
Are you...
He couldn't make the police work. She couldn't make the police work. Wound up having to go to the vigilante, and yeah, it was almost like her destiny.
Yeah, folks, sometimes you can call for justice, and sometimes you need to make it happen.
Yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, she is someone who makes things happen. She does not sit idly by. She never has. When all those people quit after the White Knight, she went into it even harder, even stronger, and that's with having her former partner's kids and things. We'll later learn more about her past, but she's definitely someone who needs to who act at all times.
Yeah, and even the assassination of Joe Keane, right?
Yeah.
She she was the only person to act and save everybody from that bomb. So, but yeah, I think that's a really great point to leave off on it. Once again, please make sure to. If you're not visiting the show notes directly, do your own research, please. Learn about generational trauma,
Yes.
learn about redlining, learn about all the ways that racism has been systemically been a part of our country and part of our, it's an institution that's just evolved. It may not be exactly what it was, but it has evolved. Learn about the case for reparations, read some Ta-Nehisi Coates, and looking, as amazing as this show is, learning how the show was made and the mentality behind it is just as entertaining in my opinion.
And there's so much to learn. We're still learning. Hopefully, listeners are still learning, and we're supposed to learn from history, right? So let's actually do that. Let's actually learn from it. Let's not just put statues up of Confederates. Let's actually learn history and what people have suffered and gone through. And so we can be better and do better. And just on a story part, just to leave off on, we do find that Lady True, I guess has saved Angela, right? She's kind of like helped her.
Oh yeah. Angela's at Lady True's compound.
Yeah, that's where the episode leaves off. She wakes up and Lady True's there, very creepily, and that's where she wound up in order to survive this experience, which may or could have either driven her crazy or killed her. But Angela does wake up in the present day, and it seems like she at least is just about done reliving the memories.
Yeah, and as they left us on that cliffhanger, although I got to binge it, so sorry.
Yeah.
We'll leave you on that one. All right. Please make sure that you're tuning into HBO's Watchmen. If you haven't read the original comic book, that's also great. Read that. If you don't want to read that, watch the movie and just replace the thing that happens at the end with the giant alien squid. Roughly the same shit.
Yes.
All right. You know what? I was thinking real quick about Rorschach, about how that kid was like, where's Rorschach? Don't compromise in the face of Armageddon. And I remember he said that in the original, in the comic book and in the movie as well. It kind of made me think of where we are with the election as well. That we can compromise or we cannot.
Yep.
Many people believe Armageddon is what we're facing. So, that's up to you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Politipop podcast. We've really enjoyed doing this. Two friends who just, if nothing else, if we can't find time to talk to each other personally, we at least find time to talk to each other about this stuff and really enjoy it. So thanks a lot. Thanks to all of our new followers on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter, #NoComrades_1K. Please keep it up. You can listen to us and rate and review us on Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or the iHeartRadio app. Please find us on Twitter at PolitiPopPod. Find us on Instagram at PolitiPopPodcast. Email us at politipopcast@gmail.com. Find our show notes and sources at politipoppodcast.wordpress.com. And today we will be writing out on the song Break the Chain, since we were talking about generational trauma and inheriting things from those who come before us. It's by Lupe Fiasco and Eric Turner. For the Politipop podcast, I've been Mike Booch.
I've been Ty. Thanks for listening.
And no matter what you're reading, what you're watching, no matter what you're listening to, always remember to never stop thinking, never stop learning, and please read between the lines. Yeah, this whole series does a great job. Actually, I'm going to do that again. It's like it didn't sound like I was just getting done drinking. Yeah, this whole series does a really great job of having, I don't want to say like, the fuck was that?
I don't know.
Something through the mail slot. You dropped a fucking comet through it.
Dude, maybe it's the 7th Cavalry.
Maybe it's the 7th
They're
Cavalry.
coming! Taking out podcasters.
Maybe, fuck, no, I don't know.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
And scene. What the fuck?